So welcome to Exodus 19, a nation married to Yah, with your host, Richard Massey. I pray that you guys are having a blessed Sabbath. And I pray also that whatever you and your family are going through, that Yah gives you the strength to go through it. Today we're going to be reading Romans 6. Romans 6. But first, 2 Chronicles 7. 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people, which are called by my name, should humble themselves and pray and seek my face, forgive their sin, and I will heal their land. And from there, we go to the heavily paid attention to Matthew 6:33. I've been heavily paying attention to this chapter. But seek ye first the reign of Elohim and his righteousness, and all these matters shall be added unto you. That verse right there does not even begin, at least to me, for a long time. Explain to me life-changing situations. So go get your Bible and let's read together Romans 6 today. Romans 6. Romans 6. Romans 6 and 1. I'm going to read it out of both of these today. Romans 6 and 1. Let's see what we got here. Out of my computer, it said, what then shall we say? Shall we continue in sin? Now let's look at this word sin, the definition according to the Bible. Before we go any further, let's look at the word sin. Because I think when we say out in the street, hey, you're sinning, we look at it, I don't know how we look at it, but I don't think that we look at it the way the Bible defines it. Let's go and see. It should have had this down here, but okay. So let's go to 1 John 3 and 4. 1 John 3, 4. So I don't think that the one on my computer does it justice. I actually think that the King James Version does it more justice. The definition of sin, according to the Bible. Up here it says, everyone doing a sin also does lawlessness. So if you do sin, you're not keeping the law. You're being lawless. And sin is lawlessness, right? And you know that he was manifested to take away your sins or your lawlessness. And in him there is no sin. In him there is no lawlessness. But what does King James say? It says, whosoever committeth sin, he transgresseth also the law. So is he talking about when you go through a red light and you break the law there? Or is this a book that's spiritual? And when you transgress, you also break Elohim's law, because you're not keeping them at all, because you say that they're not necessary since Yeshua died on the cross. So can sin be defined according to the Bible as not keeping the law? You can mix and match things in there to say, well, it's not talking about the Old Testament law. What law is it talking about then? What law is sin? What is sin talking about? What are we talking about when we say sin, like we did in Romans 6? It says what? then shall we say? Shall we continue to transgress against the law, not do it? Can you look at it like that? To let favor increase, to let grace increase, because like we said last week, while you are trying, to me, this is what I get. Why I am attempting to do the law and fall is different from not doing it at all, because my understanding is that Yeshua died on the cross and gave me grace. I'm just trying to understand. I think that the word has thrown a lot of people off, has made a lot of people comfortable, and I think we need to start looking at and understanding what these verses and chapters are really talking about, who Yeshua is really pulling for. It says, what then shall we say? Shall we continue in sin to let favor increase? 2, let it be, how shall we who died to sin still live in it? 3, or do you not know that as many of us as were immersed into Messiah, Yeshua, were immersed unto his death? So we were sinners, and when he died, that person died, right? So we are all immersed into his death. So number one, as a dead man, we're not even doing those things no more, right? So everything that we did stopped. And like I always said, I think that Yeshua's main function for dying on the cross was to turn the hearts of the children back to the Father. It says, for if we have come to be grown together and the all died, he died, we died, we shall be also of the resurrection. He rises up new. Now we rise up under him, like him, new. So now the question is, what kind of man is Yeshua HaMashiach? Is he a man that's now risen with a new agenda? Or is he now functioning and showing us and teaching us and turning the hearts of the children back to the Father, to his Father? 6, knowing this, that our old man was impaled with him. Similarity, he died, we died. So that the body of sin might be rendered powerless to serve sin no more. So that we don't be a transgressor of doing the law no more. 7, for he who has died has been made right from sin. So he died, he's already been made right. He's going to show us, and now we growing in the newness of him. We're going to be made right from sin. So now what are we doing? We're following the law, not being the transgressor of it. That's what I'm getting. Right? That's what I'm getting. 8, and if we died with Messiah, we believe also that we live with him. We're doing the same thing he's doing. What is he doing though? Where is this new agenda that we say that because he died on the cross that now we're living in grace? Knowing that the Messiah, having been raised from the dead, dies no more. Not like the animals, right? Every year you have to sacrifice a bull and a goat. But he came, and I think that's another thing that makes us confused. When he say that he came with a new covenant or a new testament or a new will. Right here, when it says he dies no more, you don't have to be he don't have to be sacrificed every year. He didn't use the blood of animals. He used his own blood. Better covenant. You don't have to sacrifice animals no more. Better covenant. So death no longer rules over him. So death should no longer rule over us. Why? Because now we're following the law. We're doing the same thing he's doing because he was instructed by his father to do it. That's only if you believe that. And that's another subject. The word believe. How simple are we making it to where are we actually doing what it's actually saying or understanding what it's saying? 10. For in that he died to sin once and for all. But in that he lives to Elohim. Let me look at that in here. It says, for in that he died to sin once for all, but in that he lives to Elohim. Huh? Why isn't he now, since we're all dying in sin and now we're all being resurrected in a newness of life, why aren't we living to him, Yeshua? In the King James, it says, for in that he died unto sin once, but in that he liveth unto God. See, I think we just let that go right by. Because now he lives in the likeness of his father. What was his father's main agenda? What was his father's main focus in the Old Testament that we said that we don't have to do no more? Because we said that Elohim in John said that he was the Word, and he became flesh, and he dwelt among us. He came down on earth and dwelt among us. And remember, we said that in the Old Testament, he's concealed, and you couldn't see his face and live. So now he makes this duality of power, and he comes down, and now you can see his face and live. So he's a duality of power, not a duality of person. So I think this is why Yeshua in this here is saying that he lives to Elohim, because Yeshua is Elohim in the flesh. In the beginning, he became flesh. And now that flesh is able to walk among us. So in the Old Testament, he's concealed, and in the New Testament, he's revealed. In the Old Testament, you couldn't see his face and live. In the New Testament, you can look at him and walk with him and talk with him and eat with him, and he can teach you and heal you. Is this making sense to anybody? This is why Yeshua promotes his father. He said, I come in my father's name. He said, if you see me, you see the Father. How is that possible? And I think in Matthew's 1:23, they said that you're going to name him Yeshua, which means Elohim with us. Why would Yeshua's name be defined as Elohim with us? (11) So you also reckon yourself to be dead indeed to sin, but alive to Elohim in Messiah, Yeshua, our Master. You have to read this for yourself, man. Because I'm going to tell you something. I read this 1,000 times and I never saw it. 11 in the King James. It says, likewise, reckon ye also yourselves to be dead indeed to sin, but alive to Elohim through Yeshua HaMashiach, our Messiah. Likewise, reckon yourselves also to be dead unto sin, indeed unto sin, but alive to Elohim, turning the hearts of the children back to the Father. Alive unto Elohim through. Who's going to do it? Who's going to turn you back to me? Yeshua HaMashiach. our Messiah. Tell me this is not what that say. I think we've been reading the word God and going right by it, and Yeshua has been separated. 12, therefore, do not let sin reign in your mortal body, but you are to obey it in its desires. King James, let not sin therefore reign in your mortal body, that ye should obey it in the lust thereof. Don't let it reign in there, and if you don't let it reign, it won't be able to tell you what to do. "13, neither present your members as instruments of unrighteousness to sin, but present yourselves to Elohim as being alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness to Elohim that are alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness unto Elohim." Mention the word sin, because that's the subject of this chapter. Sin, right? Not the law, right? So in verse 1, sin. Verse 4, no. Verse 6, sin. Verse 7, sin. Verse 8, no. Verse 9, no. Verse 10, sin. Verse 11, sin. Verse 12, sin. Verse 13, sin. And verse 14, sin is mentioned. Now, if you go back and look from 1 down to 14 and see how many times you see the word law in there, that's going to let you know what the chapter's talking about. So when it's saying that you're not under the law, but under favor, you don't let sin rule over you, for you are not under the law. You are not under the law of sin, because that's what the chapter is talking about. Sin shall not rule over you, because you are not under the law of sin, but of favor. Because let's see if the law is mentioned again, or if sin is mentioned again further on, right? It says, what then? Shall we sin because we are not under the Torah but under favor? Let it not be, they say. We can't keep on sinning, right? Because we're not under the law. And in my notes, I say, don't forget that there are 2 books. One is inside the Ark of the Covenant, and the other one outside the Ark. So inside the Ark of the Covenant was the tablets, the 10 Commandments, right? And then the book was placed outside the Ark, on the side of the Ark, okay? 16, do you not know that to whom you present yourselves servants for obedience, you are servants of the one whom you obey, whether of sin to death or of obedience to righteousness? So 14 can't mean that we don't have to do the law, because 16 is now saying you have a choice. You could be a servant of obedience or a servant of sin. Do you not know to whom you present yourselves servants for obedience? To death or of obedience to righteousness? So you have a choice of who you're going to be obedient to. So we grab that one verse in the middle, and that's what you hang your hat on. And that's what you build your foundation on. There's Elohim again. That you were servants of sin, yet you obeyed from and trusted. You believed in what you was taught in. You believed in how you was raised. But thanks to Elohim that you were servants of sin, yet you obeyed from the heart that form of teaching which you were entrusted. And having been set free from sin, you became servants of righteousness, because now you follow the law. If 1 John say that to be a sinner is being a transgressor of the law, How can you not have to follow the law and then be righteous? 19, I speak as a man because of the weakness of your flesh. For even as you dare present your members as servants of uncleanness, here's a choice, and of lawlessness, resulting in lawlessness. So now present your members as servants of righteousness, resulting in set apartness. You have a choice. You can keep saying you don't have to do the law and don't do it, and the Bible says you're in lawlessness. Or you can have an ear to hear what the Spirit is saying to the church, and you can be in set apartness. For when you were servants of sin, you were free from righteousness. You didn't have no connection to it. When you were servants of sin, you were free from being set apart. You were free from being righteous. Who wants that? Nobody wants that. We didn't know it. 21, what fruit therefore were you having then, or over which you are now ashamed? For the end thereof is death. So you ain't have no fruit, you was ashamed, and death was coming your way. But the other way is 22, but now having been set free from sin, and having become servants of Elohim, why not of Yeshua HaMashiach? And having become servants of Elohim, you have your fruit resulting in set apartness or in righteousness, and the end, everlasting life. Look at the promises made, because now you are following under Elohim's rule, and Elohim's rule is law. Commandment. Now here we read the popular for the wages of sin is death. That's the most popular to me verse in the whole chapter. But we never had nobody explain to us what it meant. It's when they tell you, for the wages of sin is death, but the favorable gift of Elohim. I couldn't make this up if I wanted to. I'm not that smart. Is everlasting life and the Messiah Yeshua, our master. You see how they are always hooked up together. One is concealed, one is revealed. One is in heaven, one is flesh and walking amongst us. Duality of power, not of person. Not two people. To me, same person, different powers. Concealed, revealed. Spirit became flesh. Couldn't see his face, now can walk among you. Both endorsing each other. One leading you back, which is the beginning. And I had some other scriptures up here that I never even went to. I already read 1 John. But look at John 15:10. Right? John 15:10 real quick. You don't have to go there. I can just read it for you. John 15:10. John 15:10. It's going to be saying, John 15:10. It says, if you guard my commands, you shall stay in my love. My Father's command and stay in his love. John 15:15. No longer do I call you servants, for a servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friend, for all teaching that I have heard from you. I don't know what else to say. So this is just a reminder that this podcast is on Spotify, and you can find me on Spotify at Richard's Podcast. I'm also on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram at 19_Exodus. And I'm on YouTube at